Welcome to Flutter Teacher. In the last session, we talked about interface in the Dart. In this session, we'll talk about 15 different interface questions that will enhance your interface knowledge. So without wasting time, let's get started. Let's start from the first question. Why interface method needs to be override? Do you know that whenever we extend a class, for example, we have a class A that contains the method test. So inside this class B, as it is extending class A, so for B, it's not compulsory to override the method of class A. But on the other hand, instead of writing extend, if I change it to say implements, so let me write here implements. Now, for this class B, it's compulsory to override the method void test of this class, that is the interface A. Now, why this happens means when we extend a class, it's not compulsory for us to override the method. And if we want to make that class as the interface, that is when we write implements, it's compulsory for that class to override the method. Now, reason here is when we extend a class, what happens? The complete definition of the method comes from the superclass inside the subclass. But when we write the implement, so instead of getting the complete definition of method, it means in this case, when class B implements A, so instead of getting the complete definition of this void test method inside a class B, only the abstract signature of method is inherited inside the class. It means only this void test along with this abstract signature, that is making this method abstract, will come inside the class B. And as we know, this class B is not the abstract class, means it's a concrete class. So concrete class cannot have the abstract method declaration. That's the reason for this class B, it's compulsory to override the methods of interface. So you can imagine that interface, that is implementing interface, it is simply extending the abstract class containing the abstract methods. The second question is the most important and frequently asked question based on the interface, that is how it is possible to implement multiple interfaces in the class. Do you know that when we extend a class, we can extend at most one class inside the given class. But when it comes to talk about interface, it's possible to implement multiple interfaces in a single class. Then what's the big magic or big secret when we change the extends to implements? So for this, we have to understand what happens in case of extend. Then I will talk about what is the secret or magic in case of implements. You know that we have a class C, and the class A has got a method called void test, and the same method having same signature void test is present inside the class B. It means the class A and B, they are the independent classes and they have got the same method signature. However, the method definition might be different here. So we have a class C here. Now let me write here extends. So we know that we can extend only one class. Just for understanding, let me try to extend multiple classes. So obviously it's not possible. That part is giving me an error. But just for understanding, just imagine that it's possible. So what is happening here? When we write extends, so due to extend, the complete method definition of the superclass comes inside the subclass. So what will happen logically here? As we are writing extends A and B, obviously it's not possible. I'm saying it again and again. So the complete definition of this void test from class A and the complete definition of this void test present in class B will come inside the class C. Means class C has now got two different definitions of method void test coming from class A and coming from the class B. And now inside main, when we have the object of C, and let's say when we write obj.test, so as we know that inside this class C there are two different test methods. So when we write obj.test, so which test to call on the object of C, that is coming from the A and coming from B, is a big question, and that's the reason it's not possible to extend multiple classes in a given class. Now you might be surprised, or you might say, yeah, it's clear and it's known to you. Then what's the big secret when I change it to say extends to implements? Let me write here implements. Now error will disappear, and the only thing is C has to just override the method. Now what will happen here? Right now we have seen in question number one that whenever we write implements interface, so instead of getting complete definition of method, only the method signature, that is the abstract method signature, that is abstract void test, will come from interface A and that will same come from the interface B. It means the class, whichever class that implements A and B, must override the method called void test. So just for the sake of simplicity and to save your time, let me copy this method and paste it inside the class C, and let me change it to say the test of class C. Now you might be surprised that I'm not getting error. Or you might be extending, or you might be thinking, as I'm implementing two different interfaces, should I need to define two different test methods? I should say no, it's not the case. You know, whatever class that implements A and B, what is compulsory for that? It is saying, means the interface A and interface B says whichever class implements me, it has to define method called void test, and there is a method called void test inside the class C. So that's the reason the single method is just managing the interface A and interface B, means both this interface B and A are happy. That's the reason it's fine. And now when I create object of C inside the main, and when I call the method test over this object, instead of getting calling the method of A and B, because only the abstract signature is getting inside the class C, the complete method, that is the test, is present inside the class C. And when I run this, you will observe here the method test C, that is the method test of class C, is getting called, and hence it's possible to implement multiple interfaces. Just this is because when we implement multiple interfaces and even they have similar method, so the class don't have to define multiple methods, because the methods are not coming from the interface, only the abstract signature is coming, and writing a single method inside a class just satisfies your all interfaces that you are implemented. Third question is a kind of tricky question. It says implementing interfaces that has same name but different method declaration. To understand this, look at this example here. We have two different interfaces in the form of class test and the class demo. You can observe here, the class test has got method called void do something without any parameter, and the class demo has got method called void do something with a parameter. So, and then we have a class called sample, which is implementing multiple interfaces, that is implementing the interface test and the interface demo. And syntactically, it's fine, or it's completely possible that a single class can implement multiple interfaces. But you know, guys, this specific example has a trick, and this problem cannot be solved. This is just because when we implement test, that is when we implement this interface called test, so test says that whichever class that implements me must define a method called do something. So just for saving your time, let me copy this method and let me paste it here. Otherwise, let me change the method definition, so it's a completely blank here. So when we write here do something, so the interface test is satisfied, because the test says that there must be a method called do something inside the class sample. That's fine. And the class that implements the demo, it says that there must be a method called do something with integer parameter. So let me copy this method from here and let me paste it inside the class. And let me just remove the method definition, that is I'm just changing it to blank definition here. You can observe here the number of errors are getting increased and we are having much more problems here. The reason here is, as these interfaces will have the same name method, means it has the method name called do something and do something same. So logically, the class sample has to define two different methods having the same name called do something, one without parameter and another with the parameter. But as per the rules of Dart, it's not possible to define multiple methods having the same name but with a different signature. Means we cannot have the method overloading in a class. That's not possible in the Dart, and that's the reason this program has error. So make sure that whenever we are trying to implement multiple interfaces that has got the same name method but the different method signature, that is different parameter list or different return types in the method, so you will face errors here. Fourth question says why constructors are not called in case of inheritance. Do you know that whenever we extend a class, before calling the constructor of subclass, by default, the default constructor of superclass gets called? Look at this example here. We have class A that contains default constructor, then we have class B, and intentionally I have written here extend just to explain my example here. And we have class B, and inside main I just created the object of class B. When I run this program, you will observe here, before calling the constructor of B, that is before calling constructor of subclass, the default constructor of superclass gets called, and we have already seen this concept in the video called constructors in inheritance. And however, using the constructor of subclass by using a super keyword, we have control to call appropriate constructor of superclass through the subclass constructor. Means when we extend the constructors of superclass gets called by using a super or by without using a super. But when I change this extends to say implements, let me write it implements. Now you can observe here when I run this program, now here the constructor of A won't get called here. Only the constructor of B is getting called. Now what is the reason here? When I'm changing this extends to implement, means when I'm using this class A as interface, here the constructor is not getting called. The reason here is very simple. When we extend a class, what happens? The instance members of class will be inherited from superclass inside a subclass, and the responsibility of inheriting those members is not given to the subclass, rather it will be managed by superclass, That's the reason before calling the constructor of subclass, the superclass constructor gets called, and we have a control to call appropriate constructors of superclass using super keyword. But what happens when we have interface? The instance members of interface are not inherited in the subclass. It means whenever we have interface, the instance members of interface must be overridden by subclass. Means that won't rely on the instance members of interface as it is coming in the subclass. Rather, the subclass should have its own members, that is own instance variable, and the complete responsibility of the complete responsibility of initializing those members is given to the class and not to the interface. That's the reason it don't makes any sense to call the constructors of interface, and that's why whenever we implements interface, the constructors of implements not get called. Let's talk about question number 5. It says, what about instance variables in interface? We know that whenever we extend a class, the instance members of superclass gets inherited in a subclass. Then what is the case when the interface contains the instance method? You can observe here the class A, that is the interface A, has got the instance variable in the form of integer data with value 10, and class B is implementing interface A. Now, whenever a class implements interface and the interface has got the instance variable, then for such interface, there are two solutions or there are two choices. The first is the class must override that specific instance member, that is, it has to define the integer data. So I should write here, let's say integer data. I just copy it and paste it here. And if you want, you can change the value, or you can go with whatever you want. Means that don't rely on the instance variable of interface. It asks us to override that specific instance variable. Now the second option is if you don't want to define the same variable or the same instance member, so what you have to do? You have to define some different variable here. Let's say I can define here, let's say underscore, or let's say the my data here. So I have defined here my data, and now you can observe here I'm getting error. This is because I haven't defined the data variable here. So if I have defined variable with some different name, then it's compulsory for me to have the getters and setter having the same name. So I should write here, let's say get data, and I should return some value. So I should write here, let's say my data, and I must define a setter. So let me write here void, or I can write here set c data, get some value here. So I can write here value, and let's pass this value to the my data. So I need to write here, let's say my data is equals to value, and that's going to remove error from my code. So I hope it's clear for you. Means we have two different choices. Either we have to define the variable as it is inside the class, or if you don't want to define variable as it is, you want to go with different name in the variable, then you have to define the getters and setter having exactly same name of the instance variable present in the interface. Make sure that you must have to deal with the instance variable present in the interface in the same way we deal with the methods present in the interface. Question number 6 says why static members, that is static method and static variables of interface, are not required to override. We know that whenever we have the static members in class, that is static members of interface or class, so whatever static variables or static methods we have, these static members are not actually a part of object, they are a part of class. That's the reason when interface has the static variable, and when we implement such interface, you can observe here inside class B, it's not compulsory for me to override these static variable or static methods. However, if I change it to say non-static, let's say if I delete the static from here, now it's compulsory for me, and right now we have seen this thing in question number 5. So if you make it static, it's fine here. And if you want to override, you can override happily. Nobody will stop you from overriding, but it's not compulsory for us to override the static members of interface inside the class that implements interface. Question number 7 is really interesting, and it says why interface members cannot be accessed using the super keyword through the implementing class. You know that whenever we inherit something, that is whenever we inherit a class by using extend, so it's possible for a subclass to invoke or to call the members of superclass by using super keyword through the subclass members. But if we try to do same thing in using the interface, that is using the implements keyword, it's not going to happen or it's not going to work. Look at this example here carefully. We have class A here that contains void test method, and we have class B. Obviously here I have written extend and not the implement. This means I want to use this class A as a superclass and B as a subclass. Here we got a test method. So I have just overridden test method of A inside the class B, and we have a method called demo. You can observe here inside the main we have object of B, and over this object I have simply called the demo method. Inside demo I have called the method test. So when I run here, you can observe here inside class B there are two different test methods are available. One of the class B and another that is coming from class A. So whenever inside this demo I'm calling a test, you can observe here the test of B is get called. And now if I want to call the test of A, which is available inside the class B, so simply I can write here super.test. And when I write super.test, let me rerun this program. You will observe here the test method of A is getting called. Means I can call or I can use the test method of B, and I can also call the test method of A using the super. Means inside this class B, I have access to two different tests, the test of B and the test of C as well. Let me change this extends to implements. So let me write it implements. Now, as soon as I have written implements, you can observe here I'm getting error in line number 17. So using this super.test is not allowed. It says the method test is always abstract and the in the sub super type. Okay, I will explain what is the reason here. So whenever we write implements and we implement some interface inside the class, so it's not possible for us to call the members of interface by using the super keyword. So why this happens means when we write extend, we can access that one. But when we change that extends to implement, we don't have rights to call that method. The simple reason here is whenever we write implements A, so for this class B, A is not a superclass, it is the interface. So as this A is implemented means A is using as an interface. So the complete definition of this A, that is complete definition of this test method, is not in the mind of Dart. What Dart says, Dart will just look at this A as interface and it will just treat this void test complete definition simply as the abstract definition. And as we know that the abstract methods cannot be called, that's the reason we can also say, means you can also see it says that method test is always abstract in the super type. Means the inside this A, Dart won't look at this complete definition. Instead, Dart will look at the abstract definition, that is abstract class, abstract method test. That's the reason we cannot call any member or any method of interface by means through the subclass by using this super keyword. Question number 8 cares about the getters and setter, and it says, what about getters and setters present in the interface? We know that whenever there is a method interface, so for implementing class, it's compulsory to override all methods of interface. And do you know the getters and setters are again these special methods? That's the reason you can observe here. We have a class B which is implementing interface A, and as this interface A has got the getter X and the setter X, so for class B, it's compulsory to override the getters and setter. So let me copy this from here and let me paste it here, and it's going to solve a problem. But the problem here is we don't have this variable. So let me copy this variable. We know that whenever there is instance variable in interface, we must have to take care about that one. We already seen that one here. So you can observe here. Let me change the value. Otherwise, you'll say why I'm using the same value here. So you can observe here as I have just written the getter and setter inside the class B, error has resolved. The ninth question is really interesting. It says implementing interface with extending a class containing method in interface. Now, if it is not clear to you, let me explain this one with an example. We have a class and I just want to use this class as interface that contains a method called void test and having some definition. We have a class B and here I want to use this class B as a class, and it has also again got the same method but with different definition. So method signature of this test in class B and inside this interface A are the same, and make sure that A is interface, B is a class, means they're totally different and they're distinct here. We have class C that extends B and implements A here. Now you might have a question, what happens to C, means what is the compulsory thing in this class C, and that's what my question is. You can observe here I'm implementing interface, and you know interface has got the method, and I'm extending class, and luckily this class has got the same method. So in such a scenario, this class C don't have to override, means for this class C it's not compulsory to override methods of interface. The reason here is as you write implements A, so it's compulsory for this class C to just override the method test, that is void test. But as this class is extending B, and by default means readily from this class B, the method test is coming inside the class C. That's the reason for this class C. It's not compulsory to overwrite method void test because it's readily coming from class B. Now you might have a question that when we create the object of C in the main and when we call it obj.test over this object of C, then which test method is going to be called? And the answer is very straightforward. As the method of B is coming inside the class C, you know that when we implement interface, instead of getting the complete method definition, only the abstract signature of method is getting called, and the complete definition of method from class B is getting inside the class C. That's the reason when I run this program, the method B of class means the method test of class B is getting called. You can observe it says the test of B is getting called. Now you might have a question. Class C can also override a method. Yes, it's possible. Class C can write its own method. So let me copy this method and let me paste it here. Let me change the definition a little bit. So I have written here test of C called. Now when I rerun the program, as you know that the test method is present inside a class C. So instead of relying the methods of B or A, that will call the test method of C, and that's what the output we have got in the console. Question number 10 is really interesting. It says implementing interface with mixing. It means what happens when we implement the interface and when we also use the mixing, and make sure that when it has the same method. So what will happen here? Look at this magic here with an example. We have a class A, and I want to use this one as interface. It contains a method called do something, and there is some definition of this method. We have a mixin here in the form of B, and it has got the same method called void do something with some different definition. You can observe here we have a class demo with B, means here I want to use mixin and implements A. So inside this class demo, it's not compulsory for the class demo to override the method of interface. This is because when we write implements A, the abstract definition of this do something is coming, and it's compulsory means it's making the demo to force the method. But luckily, as we have written with B, so from this mixin B, the complete definition of do something is coming inside a class demo, and that is just simply that is just satisfying the interface A. So for demo, it's not compulsory to override the method. Now, when I create object of demo in the main, and when I call the method ob.do something, then obviously the method of mixin, that is do something of mixing, is getting called. You can observe here I'm getting the do something of method, that is mixing, is getting called. Now what happens if I override the method inside demo? So we can override that one. Let me copy and paste it here, and let me change it to say do something of say demo class. Let me write here demo class, and when I rerun this program, you will observe here the just overridden method, that is the new method we have, do something of demo class, is getting called, and that is what output we have. Question number 11 says, what happens when abstract class implements an interface? Look at this example here. We know that whenever a class implements interface, so for that implementing class, it's compulsory to override all methods present in the interface. So you can observe here we have class B. So for class B, it's compulsory. But if I change this class B, that is if I change this concrete class to abstract class, let me write it abstract. So as soon as I have written here abstract, you can observe here the error has gone. This is because the class B is abstract, and you know that whenever we write implement C, instead of getting the complete method definition, only the abstract signature of method is going inside the class B. And as class B is abstract, so obviously abstract class can have the abstract method, and that's why for abstract class it's optional to override the method of interface. Means abstract class can override, and if it does not want, then it cannot override that method. However, for a concrete class, it's not the case. It must have to override the methods of interface. Question number 12 says, do we need to override constants of interface? In Dart, we can create constants in two ways, using the const keyword and using the final keyword. And obviously, when we use const keyword here, we have to write static here. So when we have a constant in interface using the const, so for this implementing class, it's not compulsory to override such a constant. But if we if we make the constant using final, so let me change it to say final. So as we have a constant made using final, it's compulsory for this class B to override such a constant. So make sure that constants, that is the constant which are made using final in interface, they needs to be override in class. However, the constant made using const need not to be override in implementing class. Question number 13 says, can interface extends class? I will say yes, it's possible, because every interface is a class, and obviously class can extend a class, so it's possible. Look at this example here. We have a class A, and I simply want to use this class A as a class, and it has got a method called void test. Then we have a class B. So here I just want to use this class B as interface for the C. You can observe here B has extend A, and inside this class C I have written, or I use here implements B. Means for a class C, B is the interface and B is itself extending a class A. So it means interface B can extend class A and it's completely fine. Now you might be thinking I'm getting error here. The reason for error is as we have written class B extends A means the method test of class A is coming inside class B. And however, when we write extend, we're getting complete definition. But as B is used as interface, so for C, it's compulsory to override the method test of class A. So make sure that there is no method in class B that is inside interface B. Still for this class C, it's compulsory to override method because that method is present in the class A. And now if the class B has got some method, let's say if it has the method say void demo, then you can observe here inside class C there are two errors. We have to define the method called test and method called demo. This is because demo is a method of the interface itself, so it's compulsory, and the test method is coming from class A, and from this interface B it's coming in class C. That's why C has to implement two methods, demo and the test. Question number 14 says, can interface implement another interface? I will say yes, because interface is a class, and when we try to implement some another interface, and that is again a class, so it's possible that one interface can implement another interface. Look at this example here. We have a class A, so here I just want to use this class A as an interface, and that contains method void test. And we have class B, so make sure that here class B is means I just want to use this B as interface, and I want to use this A as interface. That's why I've written B implements A. Means for this class B, A is interface and B is implemented by C. So it means for C, B is interface, and for B, A is interface. So it's logically that the class B, that is interface B, is implementing interface A. So it proves that interface can implement another interface. But make sure that as we are implementing means let's say if I removed everything from here, you will observe here inside B I'm getting error. This is because there is method called test inside class A, that is inside interface A. That's why inside B it's compulsory to have this void test. So I should write here void test, and that's okay in the class B, but we'll have error in class C. This is because for C, B is again interface. So for C, we must define this void test method. So let me copy this method and let me define this method here. Now the error will result. But let's say if this class B, that is interface B, has got some method. Let's say it has got a method called see demo. Let me write here demo. Then you can observe here as B is interface. So I'm getting error in C. So inside the C also I must override and I must have some different definition of demo. Just for saving you time, I just copied and pasted this demo method. So I hope it's clear that interface can implement another interface, and I hope it's clear for you what is the complexity or what is the thing that means what is the case of inheriting or overriding the methods in such a implementing interface cases. The last question is very important and it is the most commonly asked question. Which of the following can be used to define an interface? The concrete class or the abstract class? If you have watched my video regarding interface, I have clearly mentioned that both the concrete class and abstract class can be used as interface, because in Dart by default a class will act as interface. So it doesn't matter what class it is, whether it's abstract class or concrete class, each and every class in Dart is itself the interface. So it's your choice what do you want to use. Definitely you can go with whatever you prefer as per your requirement. That's it for this video. See you guys in the next video. Here I try to cover all the questions that comes to me from my colleagues and over the Facebook page by different students. And apart from this, if you have a different question related to same topic called interface, feel free to comment this question. And if I just missed out so many questions, so I will try to create different video and I will answer that one in that video. And if you really found this video helpful, then don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button to get my latest videos.